Like I mentioned in my video about my favorite self-care books, burnout changed the way I think about so much of productivity, work, and just life. And based on what I said in that video, a lot of you were interested in hearing more about it. So in this video, we are just going to go through some of the key concepts and my favorite parts of the book Burnout. If you're new here, hi, I am Brittany. I am the founder of WorkBrighter, and I am here to help you escape hustle culture and redefine your relationships with work and rest. And the goal of all of my work here on this YouTube channel and elsewhere is to help you burn out less frequently, less intensely, ideally not at all. And the book Burnout is just really going to help with that. So here are the 6 concepts that I specifically think will help the most with that. As you watch along, comment below and let me know which one sounds the most interesting to you. The first concept to start thinking about from this book is human giver syndrome. Human giver syndrome is this idea that the patriarchy uniquely impacts how anyone socialized as a woman on the regular experiences burnout and stress in general, because we are so often socialized to be what they call human givers instead of human beings. We are taught to offer our time, attention, and energy in service to other people and to ignore our own needs for the sake of helping other people. And when they say socialized as a woman, they don't even just mean cis women. This is anyone who society reads as a woman and puts in the place of a woman in society. And so non-binary people and trans men can also experience a lot of this as well. And I just appreciate they admit that a lot of the research they cite is focused on cis women only for the reason that that's what most of the data looks at. But they do really recognize that so many other identities experience this whole human giver syndrome thing too. Human giver syndrome says that while men experience a lot of the same stressors as women and non-binary people and anyone else, it just doesn't impact them the same way. While we all get stressed out about things like family stuff, health stuff, finance stuff, what that stress does to us can be very, very different. And not because the different genders are different, but because society treats them differently. Society is still set up mostly to serve men. The term human giver syndrome even comes from the fact that some people in society are allowed to be human beings, free to go about and do as they please. And there are other people in society who are assigned the role of human giver, and they're just kind of considered there to serve and service the human beings. And of course, the most privileged men are usually the human beings, and all of the other more marginalized identities are more likely to be put in the role of human giver. So when human givers are stressed out, in addition to just the stressor, the thing that human beings experience too, they deal with the additional stress that comes with the impact of needing to take care of your own needs when you have been taught that you shouldn't. Human givers are also less likely to actually take the time that they need to rest and recover from burnout or stress, whereas human beings consider it fine and have been taught it's fine to take time for themselves because they are beings. So they're also less likely to get stuck in the chronic burnout and stress cycle that we're going to talk about later in the video. The second concept that I really loved from this book was the idea of deciding whether to prioritize the stress or the stressor depending on where you are in the stress or burnout cycle. They explain that we experience stress as a sort of cycle. Our brain notices a stressor. It sends a message to the rest of our body to react to that stressor. Hypothetically, we get away from the stressor. Our brain notices that and sends the message to the rest of our body to calm down. We're cool. The problem is that this flight or fight system that is built into our bodies isn't really suited for the type of stress that we most often experience today. It's for things like getting chased by a lion, when we're most likely to be like stressed out about our job or the pandemic. And so since the stress response cycle doesn't recognize that, it can get stuck in the phase of the stress response cycle where it is physically reacting to stress and expending tons of energy doing so. Getting stuck in that cycle or experiencing the same stressors over and over again without dealing with them can cause you to get stuck in the stress cycle. And when you get stuck in the stress cycle, you burn out. And most of us, they explain, have like decades of built up stress in our body. And so we're just like always somewhere in the stress cycle and not very far from burnout. So to help prevent this, or at least to make it so that it doesn't happen like as often or as intensely, you can help yourself complete the stress cycle by doing a sort of like forced jump start of the system. This doesn't deal with the stressor, just the physical and mental impact of the stress, but that makes you much stronger and better prepared to go deal with the stressor. And you can way more effectively deal with that problem when you are not so burnt out from it. And the third concept from burnout that I want to talk about is that forced jump start that I talked about a second ago. Like I said in concept number 2, when you are stuck in the really physically draining part of the stress cycle, you can kind of force yourself to move by forcing a completion of the stress response. This is basically like the process of coming out of burnout. And then if we don't then deal with the stressor, it just causes a bunch of stress again and burns us out again, and we get caught in this burnout cycle again and again and again. But like I said before, once you do complete the cycle, you are in a much better place to deal with the stress. And so if you're going to deal with the stress, you want to do it when you are feeling most revived and refreshed. So in the book, they give a bunch of different categories of ways to complete the stress response cycle that are really helpful. Number 1 is physical activity. Number 2 is deep, slow breaths. Number 3 is casual but friendly social interaction, and I appreciate that distinction. Number 4 is laughter. Number 5 is affection. Number 6 is crying. God love a good cry sometimes. Then there's also creative expression and rest, which is so important that there were like multiple entire sections of the book about it. And it's really important that within each of those categories, you are able to identify at least a few ways that you enjoy to deal with stress. You know, what are a few forms of physical activity that you enjoy doing and that you can turn to when you need to complete the stress response? If you need help brainstorming that, I have a worksheet in the description that can help you come up with your own burnout prevention plan. And then speaking of rest, let's move on to key takeaway number 4. Let's talk about the rest deficit. I think this was my favorite part of the book. This book tells you how much rest you actually need, because yes, there is apparently an actual number. It is 42%. That means about 42% of our time in a day or a week or a month should be spent on some form of rest, including but not limited to sleep. Our responsibility to ourselves is just to try to meet that as best we can. Now, breaking down that 42%, that averages out to about 10 hours per day, but you don't actually have to worry about it on a daily basis. We're talking like big picture averages here. And they recommend that this break down as close as possible to 8 hours of sleep, 30 minutes for easy movement, 30 minutes for food, 30 minutes of socializing, and 30 minutes of wildcard time. And I know these numbers might seem really attainable right now, but just keep them in the back of your head, even if you're not meeting them. They're a good thing to know and be aware of. Because like if you're going weeks, months at a time on only 4 to 5 hours of sleep per night, like I was for years, you end up building what they call a rest deficit. It's like sleep debt, where you're going too long without making up the sleep and rest that you're missing out on. And at that point, it can cause burnout along with some pretty serious health problems. I can tell you all about those another time. This is why relaxing on weekends or at nights or just literally whenever you can is so important when you're burnt out. Even if it's just a little bit at a time, it is closing that rest deficit. And once you know more about that rest deficit and the different types of rest, you can try to start incorporating more of it. And I know, easier said than done, but I'm not asking you to just all of a sudden start sleeping 8 hours a night. I know that that is a pipe dream for a lot of us. Get it? Dream, sleep, But adding more rest to your life doesn't need to be as hard as it seems, because there are different qualities of rest. Not all rest is equal. Sleeping is obviously a lot more restful than watching TV, but when you're burnt out, take what you can get. This is where the idea of active rest comes in. This is the idea of resting one gear or system of your body while working another. And it's kind of like the only type of multitasking that really exists. This might be like making a habit of calling someone on speakerphone while you're tidying up around the apartment, like I was doing this morning. It might be moving around and walking around more during your breaks from work so that you're incorporating movement, just these little chunks. And again, take what you can get. All right, and now number 6 is one of my favorite phrases from the book. Not my favorite overall concept because that's the rest deficit, but this is just a fun phrase. And this takeaway is about cultivating a non-standard relationship with winning. Good, right? This addresses how burnout can cause a lack of motivation, how you can feel so stuck and so far away from your goals. Turns out the thing responsible for that is a brain mechanism that in the book they call the monitor. The monitor monitors the gap between where we want to be and where we are now and decides whether we should keep going or quit based on how big that gap is. And so when that monitor doesn't see the results it expects from the amount of time and effort and energy you're putting in, it can be like, all right, screw this. But if it's something that non-burnout you knows is really important, instead, you're gonna wanna trick that monitor. And we can do that by changing the amount of effort or type of effort that we're putting into a project, by developing a non-standard relationship with winning, and focusing on incremental goals instead of the final destination. Incremental goals are kind of like adding milestones on your way to your end destination so that all of the gaps the monitor is looking at are smaller and more manageable. It's like rewriting the rules of the game so that it's easier to win. And it's also what I talk about in my theory of big leaps versus tiny hops. So check out the video on that if you haven't yet. And then when the goals are more intangible and it's more difficult to come up with milestones or incremental steps, instead of adding milestones, you can focus on the process over the destination. Focus on like the inadvertent benefits you get from the pursuit so that you can enjoy yourself even if you don't reach the goal. And I know, again, easier said than done. So yeah, those are my favorite concepts from my favorite book. And let me just reiterate again how amazing of a book this was. It sheds so much light on how patriarchy and hustle culture can affect our stress and mental health. And so I would love to know in the comments if you have read it or if I have talked you into wanting to. Because if you can't tell, I definitely recommend it. And if you're interested in more books about self-care and escaping hustle culture, one video that you might want to check out next is the video of my top 6 favorite books about self-care. Bye, and have a brighter week.